Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Dr. Ayaz Afsa, and our topic today is action research. Action research is a powerful tool for change and improvement at the local level. Its combination of action and research has contributed to its attraction to researchers, teachers, and the academic and educational community alike. The scope of action research as a method is impressive. It can be used in almost any setting where a problem involving people, tasks, and procedures cries out for solution, or where some change of feature results in a more desirable outcome. It can be undertaken by the individual teacher, a group of teachers working cooperatively within one school, or a teacher or teachers working alongside a researcher or researchers in a sustained relationship, possibly with other interested parties like advisors, university departments, and sponsors. Action research can be used in a variety of areas, for example, in teaching methods, replacing a traditional method by a discovery method, in learning strategies, adopting an integrated approach to learning in preference to a single subject style of teaching and learning, evaluative procedures, improving one's methods of continuous assessment, in attitudes and values such as encouraging more positive attitude toward work, or modifying pupils' value systems with regard to some aspect of life, and in continuing professional development of teachers, improving teacher skills, developing new methods of learning, increasing powers of analysis, of heightening self-awareness, and management and control. In management and control, the gradual introduction of techniques of behavior modification, and in administration, such as increasing the efficiency of some aspect of administrative side of school or a college life. These examples do not mean, however, that action research can be typified straightforwardly, that is, to distort its complex and multifaceted nature. Indeed, researchers such as chemists 1997 suggests that there are several schools of action research. But before we move on to discuss some of the major approaches to action research, it's better to define what action research is. The different conceptions of action research can be revealed in some typical definitions of action research. For example, Hopkins suggests that the combination of action and research renders that action a form of disciplined inquiry in which a personal attempt is made to understand, improve, and reform practice. In the same way, Abbott 1985 regards action research as a systematic study that combines action and research, action and reflection with the intention of improving practice. Cohen and Mannion define it as a small-scale intervention a small-scale intervention in the functioning of the real world and a close examination of the effects of such an intervention. So that could be summarized in a diagram. The key terms used in the action research cycle are action, evaluation, and reflection. So to do something and then to evaluate it, and after the evaluation to rethink, and then do again, evaluate, think, and redo it. So this is a cyclical process, ever increasing and expanding and refining the actions and behaviors. Chemist and McTaggart, 1992, argue that to action research is to plan, act, observe, and reflect more carefully, more systematically, and more rigorously than one usually does in everyday life. A more philosophical stance on action research that echoes the work of Habermas is taken by Carr and Chemist, 1986, who regard action research as a form of self-reflective inquiry by participants, which is undertaken in order to improve their understanding of their practices in context with a view to maximizing social justice. McNiff suggests that action researchers support the view that people can create their own identities and that they should allow others to do the same. So action research combines diagnosis, action, and reflection, focusing on practical issues that have been identified by participants and which are somehow both problematic yet capable of being changed. Zuber and Skerritt, 1996, suggests that the aims of any action research project or program are to bring about practical improvement, innovation, change, or development of social practice, and the practitioners' better understanding of their practices. How action research is different or similar to everyday actions of teachers. So action research versus everyday actions of the teachers. Chemist and McTaggart distinguish action research from the everyday actions of teachers. It is not the usual thinking teachers do, they suggest, when they think about their teaching. Action research is more systematic and collaborative in collecting evidence on which to base rigorous group reflection. It is not simply problem solving. Action research involves problem posing, not just problem solving. It does not start from a view of problems as pathologies. It is motivated by a quest to improve and understand the world by changing it and learning how to improve it from the effects of the changes made. It is not research done on other people. Action research is research by particular people on their own work to help them improve what they do, including how they work with and for others. So action research is not, as such, the scientific method applied to teaching. There is not just one view of the scientific method, there are many. Nofke and Zekna make several claims for action research with teachers, namely that it brings about changes in their definitions of their professional skills and roles. Their professional skills and roles increase their feelings of self-worth and confidence. It increases teachers' awareness of classroom issues. It improves their dispositions toward reflection. It changes their values and beliefs. It improves the congruence between practical theories and practices. It broadens their view on teaching, schooling, and society. Now let's look at the principles and characteristics of action research. Hult and Lennon and McKinnon suggest that action research makes for practical problem solving as well as expanding scientific knowledge. It enhances the competencies of participants. It is collaborative. It is undertaken directly in situ. It uses feedback. Uses feedback from data in an ongoing cyclical process. Seeks to understand particular complex social situations. Seeks to understand the processes of change within social systems. Is undertaken within an agreed framework of ethics, seeks to improve the quality of human actions. It focuses on those problems that are of immediate concern to practitioners. It is participatory, frequently uses case study, tends to avoid the paradigm of research that isolates and controls variables. It is informative, such that the definition of the problem, the aims and methodology may be modified, changed, altered during the process of action research. It includes evaluation and reflection, is methodologically eclectic, and contributes to a science of education. It strives to render the research usable and shareable by participants, is dialogical, and celebrates discourse. It has a critical purpose in some forms, and it strives to be emancipatory. Action research is participatory. It is research through which people work towards the improvement of their own practices. Action research develops through the self-reflective spiral, a spiral of cycles of planning, acting, implementing plans, observing systematically, reflecting, and then replanning, further implementation, observing, and reflecting. So action research is collaborative. It involves those responsible for action in improving that action. Action research, another model, is suggested as a critical praxis. Kinchilo 2003 suggests a 7-step process of emancipatory action. Number 1, constructing a system of meaning. Number 2, understanding dominant research methods and their effects. Number 3, selecting what to study, and number 4, acquiring a variety of research strategies. Number 5, making sense of information collected, gaining awareness of the tacit theories and assumptions which guide practice, viewing teaching as an emancipatory praxis-based act. So, what is praxis? Praxis here is defined as action informed through reflection and with emancipation as its goal. So, action research as a critical praxis empowers individuals and social groups to take control over their lives with a framework of the promotion rather than the suppression of generalizability or generalizable interests. It commences with a challenge to the illegitimate operation of power. Hence, in some respects, it is akin to Agree's 1990 notion of double loop learning, in that it requires participants to question and challenge given value systems. For Grundy, praxis fuses theory and practice within an egalitarian social order, and action research is designed with a political agenda of improvement towards a more just egalitarian society. This occurs to some extent with Lewin's view that action research leads to equality and cooperation, an end to exploitation, and the furtherance of democratic values. According to Zuber and Skerrit, 1996, emancipatory action research is collaborative, critical, and self-critical inquiry by practitioners into a major problem or issue or concern in their own practice. They own the problem and feel responsible and accountable for solving it through teamwork and through following a cyclical process of number 1, strategic planning, number 2, action, that is implementing the plan, number 3, observation, evaluation and self-evaluation, and number 4, critical and self-critical reflection on the results of points 1 to 3 I mentioned, and making decisions for the next cycle of action research. Well, there are certain procedures for action research, and now we move on to discuss them. There are several ways in which the steps of action research have been analyzed. One can suggest that action research can be cast into 2 simple stages: a diagnostic stage, in which the problems are analyzed and the hypothesis developed, and a therapeutic stage, in which the hypotheses are tested by a consciously directed intervention or experiment in situ. Levin codified the action research process into 4 main stages. What are those main stages? Stage number 1 is planning. Stage number 2 is acting. Stage number 3 is observing, and stage number 4 is reflecting. He suggests that action research commences with a general idea, and data are sought about the presenting situation. The successful outcome of this examination is the production of a plan of action to reach an identified objective, together with a decision on the first steps to be taken. He acknowledges that this might involve modifying the original plan or idea. The next stage of implementation is accompanied by ongoing fact-finding to monitor and evaluate the intervention. That is, to act as a formative evaluation. This feeds forward into a revised plan and set of procedures for implementation, themselves accompanied by monitoring and evaluation. So in practice, the process begins with the general idea that some kind of improvement or change is desirable. In deciding just where to begin in making improvements, one decides on a field of action, where the battle should be fought. It is a decision on where it is possible to have an impact. The general idea prompts a reconnaissance of the circumstances of the field and fact-finding about them. Having decided on the field and made a preliminary reconnaissance, the action researcher decides on a general plan of action. Breaking the general plan down into achievable steps, the action researcher settles on the first action step. Before taking this first step, the action researcher becomes more circumspect and devises a way of monitoring the effects of the first action step. When it is possible to maintain fact-finding by monitoring the action, the first step is taken. As the step is implemented, new data start coming in, and the effect of the action can be described and evaluated. The general plan is then revised in light of the new information about the field of action, and the second action step can be planned along with appropriate monitoring procedures. The second step is then implemented, monitored, and evaluated, and the spiral of action, monitoring, evaluation, and replanning continues. So in a nutshell, what are the procedures of action research? In especially the model of emancipatory action research, there are 8 steps suggested for emancipatory action research for organizational changes. Number 1, review your current practice. Number 2, identify an aspect that you wish to improve. Number 3, imagine a way forward in this. And number 4, try it out. Number 5, monitor and reflect on what happens. Then number 6, modify the plan in the light of what has been found, what has happened, and continue. Number 7, evaluate the modified action. And number 8, continue until you are satisfied with that aspect of your work by repeating the cycle. In this diagram, they have been summarized. I couldn't put, you see, the exact colors here, but you can look at the diagram. It shows a gray action research model and task alignment model and different types of models here. Okay. Saga sets out a straightforward 4-step model of action research. And what are those 4 steps? Clarify vision and targets. Number 2, articulate appropriate theory. And number 3, implement action and collect data. And number 4, reflect on the data and plan informed action. Another approach is to set out a 7-step model instead of 4. What are those steps? Number 1, decide and agree one common problem that you are experiencing or need that must be addressed. Number 2, identify some causes of the problem, needs. Number 3, brainstorm a range of possible practical solutions to the problem to address the real problem and the real cause or causes. Number 4, from the range of possible practical solutions, decide one of the solutions to the problem, perhaps what you consider to be the most suitable or best solution to the problem. Plan how to put the solution into practice. Identify some success criteria by which you will be able to judge whether the solution has worked to solve the problem. That is, how will you know whether the proposed solution, when it is put into practice, has been successful? So identify some practical criteria that will tell you how successful the project has been. Then put the plan into action. Monitor, adjust, and evaluate what is taking place. Evaluate the outcome to see how well it has addressed and solved the problem or need using the success criteria identified in the above step number 5. Review and plan what needs to be done in light of the evaluation. So there are certain procedures for action research, and I have summarized them over here. The key feature of action research are: it works on and tries to solve real practitioner identified problems of everyday practice. It is the real problem teachers or practitioners come across every day. It is collaborative and builds in teacher involvement. When I say it is collaborative, it means that it is conducted in a group or in a team. It seeks causes and tries to work on those causes of the problem. The solutions are suggested by the practitioners involved. It involves a divergent phase and a convergent phase. It plans an intervention by the practitioners themselves. It implements the intervention. It evaluates the success of the intervention in solving the identified problem. Well, what I have discussed so far, let me take these points and summarize them. Well, we started with what is action research. So some of the key ideas from so many definitions by the practitioners and the researchers and theorists, we can conclude that action research is basically a practitioner-based. It is done by the people who actually practice, and it aims to improve professional practices in any organization or institutions. Then the second key feature of action research is that it seeks to answer a question such as, in an educational setting, a question can be, how do I improve the way I teach? So it is a personal objective. How can I improve the motivation of my students or learners? How can I teach any skill effectively, maybe listening, reading, writing? It relates a personal professional journey. So basically it is a kind of doing research on yourself. So that is an overall, a gist of the meaning of action research, or what type of research is this. So it is personal, practitioner, related with everyday life. Practice in professional development. What can I research? The question arises. So problems related to any of these, you can do research. In educational settings and in schools and colleges, those problems are related to materials, learning material. What type of material would be effective for the students to improve their skills? Number two, particular teaching areas. Which areas need to be given more time and taught effectively, more effectively? The problems related to achievement, motivation, behavior, that is related with the learners. How to improve the achievement of the students, how to motivate them, how to modify or change their behavior. Or it can be used for personal management issues, and they have been discussed in detail by Wallace in 1998. Okay, action research, the second stage is its planning. So action research planning, how can you plan, or what strategy you need to adapt? Well, there should be a topic. What is your topic? And then second one, it should be the focus. So formulate a question you are going to ask yourself, what question you are going to research or find the answer to. The third one is the product. What do you expect the outcome to be of the research? So keep the outcome, expected outcome in your mind. And then the mode. How are you going to do it? What would be the exact procedure, method or methodology? And then evidence. How are you going to generate evidence? So that is a topic, focus, product means outcome, mode, the way of doing it, and the evidence. They are the key areas or component of action research, which should be decided at the time of planning the research. Then comes, you see, research process. So there are certain initial preliminaries about the research process. Identify the research area and formulate a question, beginning with how can I type of questions. Number 2, you need to do some research, and that research means look at the text, lecture notes, talk to teachers, and then make an overall idea within action research. Then move on to recording your finding as you go. So keep making notes or taking notes whatever you come across related with the topic of your research. Compile a critical review of relevant literature on the problem you have identified or the topic you have chosen. Next stage comes planning for action. So you need to plan what you are going to do and prepare the necessary materials for that. Decide what data you will be able to collect to provide you with your evidence. That could be journals, formative assessment, examples of work produced, and feedback from the students could all help you in making this crucial decision. Then comes, you see, action and data collection. You need to consider, discuss any ethical issues. It is about you improving on your practice, and you have to consider it. So gather as much evidence as possible in whatever form you can. How can you gather that information? What are the methods? Well, you can use any of these methods or combination of these methods. There could be diaries, observations, questionnaires and interviews, recordings, or a photographic evidence. How will you do data analysis in research, action research? So you need to think about, reflect on what happened and whether you achieved what you set out to do. Then sort your data and identify what will constitute your evidence. So triangulate as much as possible within your data and within your theory. And triangulation, you understand, is mixing or combining two or more methods or techniques or approaches. And then next step is you write up your findings. And what shape it will take? Well, your report should include the following: introduction, explain what you are researching and why you decided to do it. Give contextual information that should be brief and anonymous. Number 2, research focus. State your questions and give a rationale for the approach that you selected, and that you will get when you relate it with literature available on the topic. Number 3, do some literature review. Write up the review of the relevant literature and show how it links to the current study. After that, you need to write about your findings, and in that section you are supposed to describe what happened and the conclusion that you drew from the data you collected. Try to also identify other possible interpretations and relate to theory or relate to other researches conducted in the same area or field. And after that, you are supposed to write the conclusions and some suggestions for further actions. Of course, then you're going to add the bibliography or the work cited, and if there are any appendices. Let's take some of the examples from practice, what people have conducted research on the topics or types of research questions. Number one, how can I increase the receptive and productive vocabulary of ESOL learners? That is your initial question. How can I increase the receptive and productive vocabulary of English for the speakers of other languages learners? So, receptive, when you read and they can understand it, or when they listen, they can figure out the meaning, and productive vocabulary would be the one which they actually use when they produce some skill. For example, when they speak, when the students speak, or when they write, and they use those words. So, if the question is, how can I increase the receptive and productive vocabulary of ESOL learners? There is a lack of structured, disciplined recall opportunities in class that could influence learners' capacity to transfer vocabulary from short-term to long-term memory and use. That you make a kind of a hypothesis. You think that lack of structured, disciplined recall opportunities in class actually influence learners' capacity to transfer vocabulary from their short-term memory to their long-term memory and its use. Then, what will you do? What's the next stage, or what's the next step? That is intervention, the intervention. So what will you do? You develop a vocabulary box, a worksheets for revision, a collaborative storytelling, a vocabulary chart, or a combination of these. These would be used as interventions to check whether your hypothesis, your expectations about how to develop their vocabulary increases or not, or expands or not. What research tools you may use in this type of research? Well, you can use the pre and post questionnaires. You can give a questionnaire in the beginning, and then what you have used during the intervention, and then you can give them a post questionnaire. Or you can discuss with students and colleagues, and the third could be the observations. Next step would be the outcomes. Whether there is improved understanding of effective strategies, you have discovered some, or improved learner awareness of language. As professional teacher, another hypothesis outcome could be, as professional teacher, I feel satisfied that I was actively involved in trying to overcome a problem area in disciplined, methodical way. It is something that I will continue in the future. That is the outcome of your plan you made in this example. Let's look at another example that is about assessment. The first was about developing vocabulary. If your question is, how can I use peer and self-assessment to improve the quality of students' written work? This is the question. I find it disheartening, you think. I find it disheartening when students quickly read my carefully written comments, look at the grade, and then put the work away, never to be referred to again. You are thinking this is the problem, and then you intervene or put the intervention. What would be the intervention? You develop standard correction code and work records, practice correction exercises, process of giving feedback modeled. There is a peer introduction of peer checking, and the target setting for improvement. So these are the interventions. And the research tools you use: record sheets, students' work, interviews with the students, and group discussions. And the outcomes: dramatic improvements in the accuracy of written work. Even students with limited English quickly develop skills for self and peer assessment. It has become part of the class routine, and students started to develop their own criteria for assessing their work. They recognize frequent errors and made a determined effort to eradicate them. So these are the outcomes of your research, or expected outcomes. I'll give you another example, that is example number 3, and look at the same cycle. It begins with the question, stage number 1, how can I progress learners' language skills and enhance their curriculum-based studies of Macbeth? If that is your question, or you take it as a problem, then you think about your target group, and that target group learners include teenagers with basic English who have to study Macbeth in their mainstream classes. Then comes the stage, the next step, that is the intervention. Observation and analysis of interaction of students prior to intervention. So you need questionnaire to assess their prior knowledge. Number 2, contextualizing activities. Could be the map of the UK, listening and research activities, DVD and reading of first part of the play, speech bubble text with dictionary support. There would be peer questioning using simple WH questions: who, what, when, why forms, vocabulary card activity or semantic webs you develop. Then observation, reading of further excerpts, character, card game, and student wrote their own ending to the play using a model, read out to others for comment before reading real play, and character card used to construct a timeline of events in the play, and use questionnaire character card games. Then you look at the outcomes, the third stage, and most positive attitudes to the study of Shakespeare and to the play is the outcome. Students have started taking interest in reading Shakespeare, and additional resources had an important impact on them if you have added, and considerable increase in voluntary contribution and interaction despite personal issues. These were the outcomes. So what were the research tools used in action research? Observation of interaction with another teacher, volunteering of information ideas, etc. Research tools could be the questionnaires, record of activity, written and oral produced. So, now we have reached towards the conclusion of this session. What I would like to summarize action research in a few points. Action research has been seen as a significant vehicle for empowering teachers as practitioners. As a research device, it combines 6 notions. Number 1, a straightforward cycle of identifying a problem. Number 2, planning an intervention. Number 3, implementing the intervention. Number 4, evaluating the outcome. And number 6, reflective thinking practice. Number 7, political emancipation. Number 8, critical theory. And 9, professional development. And number 10, participatory practitioner research. Well, there are certain useful references on which this lecture is based, and you should read them to develop your ideas and to further understand the topic. First one is McNiff J. and Whitehead J. 2005, Action Research for Teachers, a Practical Guide. Okay, David Fulton publishes. Number 2 is a Mills GE 2006, Action Research, a Guide for the Teacher Researcher. And number 3, PJ 2008, Researching Education from the Inside, Investigations from Within, Routledge. Then another very useful reference is Campbell A. 2007, An Ethical Approach to Practitioner Research, dealing with issues and dilemmas in action research, published by Routledge. And then Altrica 2008, Teachers Investigate Their Work, An Introduction to Action Research Across the Professions, 2nd edition, again published by Routledge. So that was about action research, and as the name indicates, action and research, that while you are in action and you do research, it becomes action research. But there have been many problems with action research because of these two streams are components of action research. That action relates with the practitioners, the real teachers, and research is related with the theorists. And there has often been a conflict between the two. That conflict is because the teachers think that they understand better how to deal with the students, they know how do the students learn. And the researchers who don't have an actual experience of working with the students or the learners, they think differently. They make it a more scientific or systematic way of understanding and developing the plan. So the middle ground could be when the researchers and the practitioners, teachers, work together. In this reference, action research, we started with 3 major approaches, and within them there are many others. So those 3 are, the first is a practitioner, the teacher as a researcher. So a teacher can work on his own problems. Any issues he comes across, he reads literature on it, develops a plan, intervenes, and evaluates the outcomes. Other way action research can be conducted by not just one teacher, but a group of teachers, or maybe in a team, either within one institution or in more than one institutions. So in this way, it will be more collaborative type of action research. And the third type of action research identified is when teacher as a researcher and the researchers with the theories work together. They bring their own strengths of the subject and they combine both to reach to a conclusion. So these are all possible ways of doing action research, and the purpose of action research is basically to improve the conditions, the behavior, the situation, and that is related with, in an educational context, with a professional development, to become a better teacher, to make a better learning material. And in this way it is cyclical, that it never ends. It starts with some action, then evaluating the action, then reflecting on it and making another action. So it is a spiral or cyclical until the problem is finally resolved. Well, that is that for today. It's the end of the lecture, and thank you very much for listening. Allah Hafiz.